start over here. When we're looking at future planning and what the district needs, we have lots of areas to take into consideration. So let's make this go through. Right now, the district has quite a few initiatives going. We're in the strategic planning process, the very beginnings of that with Batelli for Kids. We do have a 10-year capital projects plan that Sean Winters and the facilities department are doing annually updates to the board on where we fall. And currently, one of our planning processes include this potential financial cliff that every legislature and every school district is planning for with the next biennial budget. So when I start looking and the district starts looking at those future plannings, these are three big components that we're focused on right now that are going to drive future decisions that we're making. Okay. So as part of those, when we start looking at the budgeting and forecasting process, what I'm looking at is trying to see what our trends are, what we're looking at as far as enrollment, how our staffing levels are going. So this is the time where we're really trying to spend some time and dig into that data that will support what we need and what we need to look forward to in the next 10 years, 5 years, and moving forward. So one of the biggest things that I found a need for in talking with Dr. Keyser as well and with Mr. Winters is we really need to know what it is that we need. What are the district needs? So to drive our strategic plan, we need to know what the district has, what it needs and what needs repair. We need to look at our classroom environments as well as our facilities. And unfortunately, with a lot of the items in our capital improvement plan at this point, they get pushed aside or taken over by another emergency situation. So what we would like to do is I'm going to send out an RFP looking at a total comprehensive needs assessment for the district. And now I want to remind everyone that issuing an RFP doesn't guarantee that we're going to offer that award. So that would be coming to board if it within the thresholds of what we were doing and our policies. But this needs assessment will go through and address, like I said, not only our building needs as far as facilities, but making sure, looking at classrooms, is our furniture conducive? Do we have the air conditioning? What do we need and what is an immediate need versus something that we need to plan for in the future? So that needs assessment would be conducted by an independent party so that we have a outside perspective of what we need. So just as the timeline for initial projects of what we have going on right now, in the next month, you will have the preliminary budget presentation brought before the board on October 5th. And then the hearing and adoption of that budget would take place on October 26th. During that time, I would also be putting out that RFP for the district needs assessment. And what we would like to do, and what I've been striving for, is to stop presenting you a preliminary budget in October and being able to give you that information much sooner and making strategic decisions before we even start the fiscal year. So with our budget forecasting and the tools that I've been working with Baird on, being able to give some preliminary budget forecasting as early as December. That's when I would start working through that process, and I would anticipate to start sharing a few ideas in the January timeframe with the board on where we're looking and what that forecasting, and not just looking at 1 year at a time. We really, I have the capacity right now to be looking at those next years and the next year and looking at it, but we haven't really been engaged in the ability to conduct those in a strategic manner and sharing that out with everyone. So with this new timeline, I think we will be able to address that and be able to get more input from the board and the stakeholders. And this is part of the process that my budget work group is really focusing on, is that we want to be looking way forward and not let us deal with this stuff that we already know is going to happen. We need to concentrate on what's happening in the future. And that is all I have to share with you tonight on that process. The biggest takeaway was just informing the committee as well that I am going to go out for an RFP sometime in the next month to look at what those need assessment would look like and how much that process would cost us. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. First, with the total comprehensive needs assessment, is that facilities, or what is the comprehensiveness of the total need? What are we looking at?
We would be talking about the facility needs. So, but as I said, not just the actual brick and mortar buildings, but looking at the furniture, looking at it will not include like curriculum and things of that nature. It is going to be object-based.
So facilities, furnishings, there's also like mechanical systems in our facilities also?
Yes, air conditioning, ventilation, all of the air handling, the canopies over the buildings, all, you know, I know McNeil has some EFIS issues with their overhangs. It will address all of those situations and identify where we have problems that we aren't aware of.
Okay, so then when we going out to RFP, it'll be out for like a month or so?
Yes,
So,
that's my intention. So we would probably, oh, sorry.
Sorry. Sorry to tell because we got masks. I can tell your lips are moving and mine are moving.
I know, we get going.
So I was thinking, so like around December, we might have a vendor to work with. When would you expect that they would produce their product?
Depending on the time frame in October that I get the RFP out, I want to make sure it's comprehensive. As you said, I'd probably have it open for a month, and I would anticipate that I would be sharing information with the board on a bid selection. I don't even know at this point what the cost is going to be, so not knowing approval versus information items, where we would be, but I would anticipate that probably early December, I would have that information to share with the board.
Okay. So then when you think about our 10-year capital improvement plan, and some parts I'm aware of, some parts I'm not. So as you said, some of this is reactive right now. Mm-hmm. So we have things identified in a 10-year plan, but kind of what gets priority or what gets done immediately is kind of like what we're reacting to. Right.
It's a very fluid plan, and that was a conversation we had last, I think it was January or February when we presented that plan, is that we identify we try to do $1 million of just our capital improvement, but when we have a boiler break or something, that will shift those. So we always say it's kind of a fluid plan, but this is what we're looking for, aiming forward.
All right. So then let's say the total comprehensive needs assessment goes out to bid, it's approved by the board, our vendor produces a document, these are your needs. At that time, will the 10-year capital plan kind of change, or?
Yeah, Mr. Winters then would obviously be looking at that in collaboration with me and Dr. Kieser, and we would develop what those priorities are going to be and how we're going to address it based on the needs assessment.
And now speak to the fiscal cliff. Put it in context in terms of how far out and when, and people to understand the impact of what we're talking about, what we might be looking at.
Right. The fiscal cliff that every school district is looking at is the funding from the state level. When we have a biennial budget, you know, we have an idea of where we're going to be projected for the next 2 years. So we are in that second year of the we're in the first year of the biennial budget, sorry. I'm working 2 years ahead. So in 2023, we will be having a situation where we don't have any idea what the funding is. It will be reliant on our numbers from the pandemic timeframes as far as enrollment and just not having that commitment. The ESSER funds will be exhausted. There are so many unknowns for that budget is what that cliff that everybody is very concerned about where we're going to be and looking at our enrollment and all of our factors. So there's a big unknown at that point. We have this year and next year in this biennium budget to really plan for how we're going to address those issues.
All right. And then lastly, with the strategic planning that the process that we're engaged to begin in, your thoughts about just priorities, because as you described, needing a total comprehensive needs assessment, having a 10-year plan that currently is reactive, but if the assessment is done, things could be reprioritized. And then, strategic planning, we know we're looking at that cliff, that possibility. Do you feel what things do you feel are priorities or important to help us as a board position ourselves so that we can be in the best place to provide teaching and learning and be a good employer to the employees that we have in the community that we serve?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think in my part it starts with our needs assessment, but it's a collaborative conversation as with the other sides of the administrative team and the superintendent on what is all-encompassing. So I'm not at a point where I can tell you exactly what we should be focusing on. Our first thing that we should always be focused on is student achievement. And that is where the district is striving and making that work. But how that translates into the strategic plan and the financial resources, that we're continuing to work through that process.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
So the question I have for you is, has the school district done a needs assessment in the past? And if so, do you know roughly how much interest we got when we put the RFP out, so that we kind of have an idea of okay, maybe we're going to just be expecting one or two, or there might be more that can provide that service that's looking for that?
I am unsure when the last comprehensive needs assessment was done. There was one done during the referendum period in 2011, 2012. As far as our needs assessment at this point, a lot of that work has been done by our facilities department internally, working with vendors such as Nexus and Angus Young Architecture, organizations of that nature. We would anticipate seeing responses from companies such as Nexus or architectural firms. And that's doing this needs assessment, I think, will give us an opportunity to get outside perspectives from where we have always been. So I don't know how many will bid, but we will be putting it out to everyone. We have our bid list, and anyone that has reached out since COVID, which we've had quite a bit, that want to help us spend our money, we've added them to our bid list. So I think that there will be lots of people notified of potentials, and they may not be at a space in their organization to provide that comprehensive, but I think that we will get some significant interest in doing this, because every district in the state of Wisconsin is looking at some sort of needs assessment to determine what is the best use of our funds.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
One more question. Just kind of explain the Baird forecast model, the tool, and the assumptions that might be built into how far out would we be looking, and being able to kind of just project some things to help in decision making.
Okay. The forecast model at this point, it takes our past 5 years of data, and we can project out another 5 to 8 years from that data. And it will be based on assumptions that we build into it, based on, I'll be looking at enrollment, I'll be looking at open enrollment, in and out, talking about our property values, and we're able to plug those in by dollar amounts or percentage points and be able to draw that out even further. And then it actually has the capacity to build us some presentations and graphics to be able to put that out to our stakeholders in any format that they would be able to receive it in. So it's a very powerful tool. We just need to free up some resources for me to be able to work on it more.
Thank you.
All right. I don't have any questions. Are you good? Okay. I said that there's no action needed on this, so we'll just continue on. So the next item we have is item 4A. That is our Executive Director of Human Resources, FTE.
All right, so wait for the board. Let's see if that, let me restart that one. Dismiss. There we go. All right, thank you. So tonight is a continuation of a discussion we started a month ago in regards to a process of recreating a human resources department separate from the conglomeration of business, finance, operations, facilities, and human resources. And in order to do the work, I am asking tonight for approval to the full board of an additional FTE for the purposes of posting an executive director of human resources position. Within operationally the org chart, it would create a fifth kind of column here, and we currently have an FTE in what was the director of human resources, and what I'll share in a moment here is a delineation of how that new structure, if the FTE is approved, these two positions would interact with one another. But in essence, I had shared this concept of the organizational chart, and currently in that last column, it is that top box is gray because it has not been approved yet. You can see there are some other gray boxes in there, and those are potential future positions that may come before this committee for FTE, but right now I'm really just talking about that top gray box. As I had mentioned before, when we think about an employee life cycle, we're really talking about a cycle that starts with recruitment, which we're constantly doing each and every day by each and every employee for our district. And then once we onboard and develop our staff, we will hopefully grow them all the way through an entire cycle where they will retire within the district, 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. We know that the reality since Act 10 that life cycle gets interrupted with people onboarding and then taking jobs in other organizations and coming back. So sometimes that employee life cycle loops back around a couple of different times. But as you can see in this slide, this work is not just human resources work. This is actually deeply collaborative work that incorporates every single department within the district. The executive director specifically, when we think about high-level strategic levers, is really talking about being a member of that executive team in helping to develop an overall recruitment strategy, not just with positions that are hard to fill, but also within areas of monitoring and developing levers around diversity and dual language immersion, as well as any other programming that we may as a district leverage. We are also talking about leveraging a hiring process and a retention process in collaboration, coordination with other departments, as well as being the person committed to nurturing and diversifying our staff so that we as an organization, if we truly exist because our community exists, is reflective of that community that has created the school district, as well as partnering, being a part of working within the district and buildings around enrollment-driven staffing, and also being that records custodian for employee files and open records requests. Now, some in the community might be asking themselves, well, we've had a director of HR, so what happens to that position? And this is where currently with one FTE, that person has to do all of the work. But if an additional FTE is approved for the purposes of creating this executive director position, we do have the capacity and the ability to take that existing FTE and that position and be more strategic with that. So that's what this slide really speaks to, is in addition to that list that I just shared about with recruiting, retaining, staffing plan, and so forth, that former director position can now be much more targeted in the technical aspects of the HR position, which is really about staff relationships or staff relations. So this is the person who would be our Title IX coordinator, which is a part of HR, investigating any employee complaints that may be filed at the district level, managing any employee investigations or grievance procedures. So this is a liaison with our BEA and other union groups. Being the custodian of our employee handbook, which I'm happy to say is coming across the finish line here and will be rolled out to our staff here. I'm hopefully within the next week and a half. And then also working in collaboration with our Teaching Learning Equity Department, which does do all of the work around educator effectiveness. Partnering and collaborating with them so that we can ensure that educator effectiveness, not only from a PD standpoint, but from a technical standpoint, is being carried out in a manner that benefits our employees and our students with respect to educator effectiveness. And then also coordinate plans of assistance with building administrators or district administrators in the event that those things happen. So really I've position these two FTEs to be one of a strategy, which is the executive director, and then one of a technical expertise, which is that director piece. So with that, I did not receive additional questions from board members. I had some individual conversations with other community members, and so I try to incorporate those in my comments. So I'll open it up to additional questions from the committee at this point.
Committee Member Levy, do you have any questions?
One, I think in previous conversations we've talked about this role and just how in our current arrangement, some of the attention that needs to go to staff by the various functions of the position, it's a lot for one person to do. So just kind of give, because there are some in the community who say, well, why do they need another executive, whatever. But explain the organizational purpose for the role and how you envision this role providing a need for us as an employer and meeting the needs of our staff.
Absolutely, and I appreciate asking for that clarification. So when we think about the organizational chart and we really think about the administrators that I directly supervise, having that executive director of human resources being someone that I directly supervise and provide that overall visioning for the district helps us execute on a district, a board and a district goal of ensuring that we are building an environment that honors and values our employees, sets systems and structures that both ensure that we are continuously working towards the belief that our organization should be reflective in as many identities as possible to our community, and that our systems and structures are set up in a manner that both support our employees so that they can in turn support our students and our families in the community, but then also be able to attend to all of those technical pieces that need to happen as a result of running a large, complex organization. Having one person do all of that just means that it's kind of like the old saying, if we have 27 initiatives and we prioritize all 27 initiatives as priority one, then none of them become an initiative. But if we have individuals that we say, okay, here are your 2 or 3 chief priorities, we can execute on far greater initiatives with the depth and the commitment that we want as an organization to move us in the direction that we want. So that's why having that additional FTE, one, provides that space so that we can execute on those things that we hold dear to us, as well as position an individual at a level that will intersect with the board, myself, and the community in a manner that holds up that human resources belief and responsibility, so that we can move our organization in the direction that we wanted to.
All right. So like in addition to performing some of the basic human resource functions, this person would be someone to help employees understand how to use their sick leave during a time of COVID. How are things going to be carried out, things like that?
They will be able to strategize around those pieces, but then also similar to what Ms. Armstrong had talked about around the business side and planning forward. This individual will be responsible for planning for future needs of our staff, even before we recognize them as technical needs for our staff.
So another function of this role will take care of the people that take care of the children for us.
Absolutely.
All right.
So you're good? Okay. The question I had would be the same exact thing that Board Member Levy asked, was if for the community, we want to make sure that it's justifiable and that we actually have reasons behind it why we need this position. And since you answered that question, I am good also. So I see that there's a recommended action to move approval to the full board of a 1.0 FTE for the purpose of posting an executive director of human resources vacancy. Can I get a motion for that then?
So moved.
I'll provide a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion passes. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I echo that. Thank you very much.
All right, so the next thing on our agenda is 5A, which is our next meeting date. That will be held on Tuesday, October 5th at 5:30. And we're to meeting close. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the meeting's adjourned.
Just as a comment to the community that may be listening in, earlier in the day, due to availability of board members for the full board, we did cancel our human resources and our regular board meeting. The Human Resources Committee meeting has been posted and rescheduled recently for tomorrow at 7 p.m. or after the special board meeting. And I am working with the board president to reschedule the regular board meeting that was scheduled for 7 p.m. tonight. Any and all emailed public comments will be held over till that next regular board meeting. So, thank you.
You have been removed from the call.